Jeff Erickson is back with us for another go-around from Rotowire.com, your one-stop shop for fantasy sports. You know, we never talk fantasy hockey, but if you get points for penalty minutes, this was like a hockey lover's dream come true in the first opening second of the Rangers-Caps rematch tonight.
Yeah, if you had daily moves and points for penalty minutes, you should be rushing to pick up any Cap or any Ranger before this game. You know, when they signed Ogie Oglethorpe and the Hanson triplets, they're the Hanson brothers, you knew that there was going to be some fireworks there at the start of the game. Sure enough, there were. And it all stems from, you know, the hideous ruling with the Tom Wilson situation there. A $5,000 fine, the max that the NHL can levy without a suspension. No suspension. You look at his history, of course, there had to be something there for that. Meanwhile, MLB just slapped another 3 extra games on Amir Garrett's suspension for gesturing or something.
Yeah, it's interesting to see the difference between baseball and hockey. It really is. And unfortunately, that's kind of how things work sometimes, Jeff. You're right about that. And funny thing about Wilson is he's got a history, and people have talked about this. And there's others that believe that if Panarin didn't jump on his back in the game, you wouldn't have had him get thrown to the ground minus the helmet. Look, it's an ugly incident for hockey. The Rangers canned JD today as well as their GM. I'm a huge John Davidson fan, going back to when I was a kid, watching him in net for the Rangers and then seeing him and Sam Rosen all those years calling games before he ever went into the front office. So I'm bummed as a Rangers fan to see JD gone. But as we talked about earlier, hey, you got to win and you got to get to the postseason in New York 4 years in a row, no matter who's the GM. They're not going to be patient in New York the way they would in other cities.
Yeah, the timing's a little weird though, right? I mean, it's after the team put out that statement, like basically, you know, tearing down Paros and you know, for the lack of the suspension and all that. You know, it's almost like, you know, in the front office snapped their finger, or you know, NHL front office snapped their fingers, said, "Hey, do something about this," and they did. I mean, because why else would you have to? Like, couldn't you wait to the end of the season otherwise?
Exactly. All right, let's shift it over right now. Before we get to baseball, let's get a wrap up on the NFL draft from you and your team at Rotowire. Number one, I'm just going to the Rotowire NFL content that is up at the site at rotowire.com, and not surprised, but you've got a lot. You've got the Dynasty Watch Rookie Top 75. You've got the redraft rankings. You've got fantasy fallouts from days 1, 2, and 3, hot takes on video. Again, you guys covered this about as good as you could expect. And for fantasy fans looking to see how this is going to be part of their fantasy football drafts, you've got them covered right now on the website.
Yeah, that's right. And, you know, hey, football is like a 24/7, 365 sport now. I mean, there were, you know, best ball leagues getting drafted right after the Super Bowl. And of course, that's only going to pick up after the draft. A lot of dynasty drafts are happening this week and next. So we got to be on top of it. You know, we're working on the magazine now. I'm writing my Bengals team preview this weekend, at least stage 1 of it. We'll see. And before we could kind of wait until after the All-Star break. And okay, our mindset's now on football. I mean, yeah, of course we have some people that are football only and the cycle happened, but the attention being paid, the way it's more actionable now than it used to be in the past has changed.
I love the fact that you're covering the Bengals preview. Now, of course, you're a Cincinnati fan. You love the Reds, the Bengals. It makes a lot of sense. Were you upset that the Bengals bypassed Penei Sewell and went after Jamar Chase instead?
No, I wasn't upset. To be honest, I'm not sure even still what was the best route. Everything I hear about Chase, though, is he's a difference maker. He's a generational wide receiver. So the fact that he and Burrow played together, they're familiar with each other. He wanted to be there. Burrow wanted him. These are all positive things. They signed Riley Reif as a right tackle this offseason. They have Jonah Williams, who was their first round pick 2 years ago, as their left tackle. It might be a little early to kind of say, okay, Williams isn't going to get the job done. However, you don't want another lost season of injuries with Burrow too. So I see both points of the argument. They did invest in their second round pick on an offensive lineman. They got other linemen later in the draft. We'll see if that's enough to build the depth and improve like the guard position. Right guard in particular was a problem spot for the Bengals last year. So that's the one area I want to see what they do there to improve.
Look, it doesn't matter how great Jamar Chase is. If he can't keep the quarterback upright, and especially Burrow coming off the injury, nothing's going to change. So that's going to be the biggest question right there: is will they be able to keep him keep him vertical? And hopefully, the answer is yes.
Yeah, that's right. And the thing is, I like that trio of wide receivers now. It should be a lot of fun between Boyd, Higgins, and Chase. That's some great targets. They say they want to keep mixing on the field on third downs now this year. Gio Bernard is gone. We'll see if they hold true to that and if Mixon can stay healthy in his own right.
Now, according to the Mario Puig Dynasty Watch column, he's got Travis Etienne as his number one fantasy player as a rookie, followed by Kyle Pitts with Atlanta. And then, as you mentioned, Chase third to Cincinnati. Then Trevor Lawrence fourth. And then that's the first tier. Tier two, Najee Harris with Pittsburgh. And then Jalen Waddle with Miami. Devontae Smith with Philadelphia. And Elijah Moore rounding that out with the Jets. So that's his top 8. And I like the fact that he actually has Lawrence in the top tier, which is interesting because you wonder how many teams are going to target Trevor Lawrence, knowing that it might take a little while before he truly becomes that elite quarterback that everybody expects.
Yeah, I mean, let's face it, Jacksonville wasn't very strong last year, but he does have a lot of good targets to work with. I am excited about that. And if he's been the generational quarterback prospect for as long as I know, since I've heard of him, since he was a recruit before he even went to Clemson, everyone said this guy's going to be the guy, right? So if that's the case, yeah, he is going to be, that is a generational guy that should be high on that list. He can run a little bit. You're looking for that fantasy wise as in a quarterback that has to boost him a little bit as opposed to a more statue-like quarterback.
Isn't it funny how running backs are completely devalued in the draft? They get paid the least amount of money, but they're fantasy gold when you're talking about the true value of a good running back.
Yeah, they're almost overly valued in fantasy, it's interesting. The channel SiriusXM Fantasy did a draft on Sunday for right after the draft concluded. They did a one with a lot of hosts on the channel, and 13 of the first 14 picks were running backs. So that kind of illustrates how the fantasy world values the running back position.
Yeah. Hey, by the way, you mentioned generational player before in potentially Jamar Chase. Would you call AJ Green a generational receiver, considering he was on top of the game for years, and then he fell off, but still was as good as anybody for quite a while?
Yeah, he fell off because of injuries. I mean, that's why. I think that's the only reason why. But I mean, he was an elite guy. He was a franchise wide receiver. He was everything he was expected to be. Absolutely a generational guy.
Are there any players in certain fits that you absolutely love right now heading into the upcoming season?
It's honestly, I like the Javonte Williams fit in Denver. I know my colleague Joe Bartle did not. We had a debate on that on the show on Monday. Melvin Gordon, even this year, doesn't totally scare me. I think it'll be a timeshare in year 1, and then in year 2, it's all the gloves are off, and he'll be the lead guy. It's kind of like J.K. Dobbins this year, where Dobbins is going the first round in a lot of fantasy drafts because they, with Mark Ingram gone, it's his job now. Maybe he'll share with Gus Edwards, but it's with Denver, there's less to share with. I think it'll be just those two guys. Philip Lindsay's gone. I think you look and see that, Gordon's got a DUI trial coming up at some point too. And this is his last year in Denver. It's not like the Aaron Jones situation with AJ Dillon where Jones re-signed. I don't think I think the threat of Gordon re-signing is lesser just because he's older for one thing. And I don't think he's the same high ceiling guy either.
Jeff Erickson covers fantasy sports for us weekly here on our Wednesday hits from the team at Rotowire.com. We just talked fantasy football with Jeff. Let's move to baseball. The big story, John Means. He means business today. All season long, he's been terrific, but what a performance against Seattle, tossing that no-hitter, and nearly a perfect game had his catcher not drop strike 3.
Yeah, that's right. And it's kind of one of those weird, quirky rules in baseball. Like, why does this even exist? In the first place there. But so it is what it is. He was amazing. The Mariners lack the means of production, but nonetheless, John Means has been fantastic all season long. This isn't a fluke. This isn't like one of those guys having just a one-off wild, everything went right sort of day. He's really good. The Mariners do stink a little bit too. And hey, this is pushing just a little bit more of a push. Let's get Jared Kelenic up there. Okay, let's go. I know the win-loss record doesn't suggest it, but this isn't a good offense. So let's get your best guys up there. This is the third time in 3 years that they've been no hit.
Tell me this much. What has made Means such a better pitcher this year in particular?
He's added a little bit of velocity, which makes that changeup all that better, and that changeup is so dialed in right now. It's just a little crisper, a little bit better. He's been showing this all along, and he took the next step this year. And I stayed away from him a little bit because of the team context. I just thought, they weren't going to get he wasn't going to get any run support. The bullpen's lousy behind him. Those things haven't been a problem for him so far.
No, you're right. Let's talk about pitchers that are turning the corner this season, in addition to Means. The last couple of starts for Dylan Cease have been terrific, haven't they?
Oh, yeah. 11 Ks, and he had 3 hits of his own against the Reds yesterday. Looked really good. And the thing is, he cut back down on his walks. Now, will that always continue? He faces the Twins next. We'll see. But wildness has always been the thing that's held him back. If he can just keep it at a manageable 3 walks per 9 or lower than that, ideally, that would be a big step forward right then and there for him, getting ahead in counts, because his stuff plays. It's just a matter of being able to just throw it for strikes all the time.
A couple of weeks ago, we talked about whether or not to, cut ties with Madison Bumgarner. He's been really good his last few starts and trying to definitely right the ship after a disastrous beginning to his 2021 season.
Yeah, that no-hitter kind of, even if you don't want to call it a no-hitter, but that kind of came as perfect timing there.
It was. Absolutely was. Nick Pivetta, are you buying his resurgence in Boston?
A little bit. The wildness is still there, but facing the Tigers cures a lot of ails. He struck out 8 in his 5 innings yesterday. Would have liked him to go a little bit deeper. Fortunately, he got all sorts of good run support, so that the first reliever that came in that was really struggling didn't really hurt his win so much. But yeah, I mean, you can use him. You got to just pick your spots with him. He's a streamer.
Makes a lot of sense. All right, Cole Irvin, talking about another guy that's a different change of scenery and seeing what he's doing, goes from Philadelphia, not to Boston like Pivetta. He goes to Oakland, and Cole Irvin's been really good.
Yeah, he has, and didn't really see this one coming. In fact, when we saw that Mike Fiers went on the IL, we thought, okay, it's going to be Dalton Jeffries, or maybe it'll be someone else out of that their farm system. But no, it was Irvin. He's had his pretty good moments so far. And I think yesterday was the best day Cole Irvin's ever going to have, but it was great. And, took advantage of a Blue Jays lineup that was missing George Springer again. I almost think that kind of let the whole team down a little bit too. It's like, hey, we got Springer back. We're kind of getting close. Oh, no, he's not back. He's not in the lineup again tonight, by the way, too. So probably will head back to the DL. Has setback with that quad, and that's got to be super frustrating both for him and the Jays.
You talked about J.A. Happ a few weeks ago and how you were loving him in Minnesota and you were buying J.A. Happ because you thought it's the perfect scenario. He's been really good. He hasn't thrown deep into a lot of games, but 5-6 innings, he does what J.A. Happ will do. Limits the hits, the runs, doesn't strike a ton out, but he wins his share of games. Yeah,
he does. Just needed some bullpen support yesterday and should have had another one. They gave it up and then turned around and got the win anyhow later. That wasn't the case. Actually, the Rangers won yesterday, but Adolis Garcia did the bullpen in there. The thing is, he's taking advantage of these great matchups. He gets another one this weekend. And then you kind of have to pick your spots with him again, too. You don't want him going against like the White Sox, for instance. With all their good right-handed hitters. Even though they're missing Luis Robert, it's still formidable enough that you don't really want to have a lefty like Happ facing them.
Speaking of lefties, let's talk about top lefty prospect Daniel Lynch and his debut in Kansas City with the Royals.
Yeah, looked a little nervous. It was a little wild. 4 walks, 3 strikeouts against Cleveland. So, a little shaky in his debut. He could have used a little bit of defensive support, should have gotten out of that 5th inning. Could have been in line for a win had that had been the case. But, I'm excited about him. He's one of our top rated prospects. I picked him up in one league and tried to in a couple others. I think he's a guy that they want to stick in that rotation. They moved Jacob Junis to the bullpen just to make room for him and also to buffet that bullpen a little bit too.
Is Dom Nunez seizing the catching job in Colorado?
He's seizing a part of it. Catchers are always quirky because of the defensive side of things. Elias Diaz had a really nice throw, for instance, the other day, just nailed a runner. And that's the sort of thing that keeps, Diaz from getting some, keeps him in the lineup from time to time. You look at Cincy, Tyler Stevenson versus Tucker Barnhart. Stevenson's probably the better hitter at this point, but Barnhart's a superior defensive catcher. Defense matters so much behind the plate.
I hear you. Meanwhile, let's talk about Tyler O'Neill and suddenly his resurgence coming back after the IL trip, and his batting average goes up about 100 points, and he also starts swatting balls, out of the yard left and right.
Yeah, power speed combo. It's funny. He and Harrison Bader kind of came up together. They're always even compared to each other. They have similar skill sets too. Bader is back now, stole a base today, homered the other day. You're trying to find guys that can play on a regular basis and get you a little bit of power, get you a little speed. Both those guys fit that bill. Just comes really at the risk of batting average. O'Neill still strikes out a lot, doesn't walk that much. Same thing with Bader. But in a league where the league batting average is 233 and the fantasy league batting average is in the 240s, okay, a guy that hits 200 doesn't kill us as much.
Injuries have been a killer for some players so far. The season that Christian Yelich is having just never gets started. One game back, gets hurt again, back on the IL. That back could be something that Jeff ultimately really, it just affects his career. Forget the season. A bad back can just completely kill you as an athlete.
Yeah, 100%. Is he going to be able to run on a regular basis? Is he going to be able to do some of the things he did? The fact that they put him on the IL right away demonstrates to me, though, this is pretty concerning that it locked back up on him. He's dealt with this in previous seasons, but it's obviously way worse this year, and he can't do the things he's supposed to do. So, yeah, I'm really worried.
Alex Kirilloff had just taken off offensively, home run, and now he's on the IL.
Yeah, that was a tough one to see. I was like, yesterday I was trying to set my daily fantasy lineups on DraftKings, and it's like, where's Kirilloff? Why isn't he in the lineup? And then you see he's going on the IL. And they got Sano back too, so that kind of it kind of replaces him too rather readily. He'll have to fight his way back in the lineup. Now, I still think left field's the place for him to go ultimately, but yeah, you hate seeing this.
Anything worse than if you own Luis Robert and maybe you also had a share in his teammate, and I'm already forgetting the
Eloy Jimenez.
Yes. Right, Eloy Jimenez. Both of them now going to be out for much of the season, and suddenly the promising 2021 campaign doesn't look so promising for Tony La Russa and company.
Yeah, and Tony will keep forgetting rules too, by the way, and that'll be fun. I missed another one today in the Reds game there. So if he had Liam Hendriks as the ghost runner on second base, without realizing that didn't need to be the case, and it kind of came into play a little bit. But it's tough for the White Sox, and it's tough for us in the fantasy realm as well. Unless you have IL spots in your league, he's a flat out cut. 12 to 16 weeks minimum. So I've heard up to upwards of 16 to 24 by the time he actually comes back too. So really tough.
Awful. That's awful. Joey Votto out probably for the rest of the month of May.
Brutal broken thumb. That hurts his power when he comes back too.
So a lot of injuries to deal with right now. You mentioned Springer earlier. Nick Castellanos also battling an injury right now with the Reds.
Yeah, that's right. Yesterday he left tweaking his back. They said he's going to be fine. Originally in the lineup today, they played a getaway game, and he was a late scratch. So that's obviously a big concern.
Meanwhile, the website, Rotowire.com, I talked about all the great NFL draft content earlier. Baseball, you got a lot going on. How about this? Chihuahuas start tomorrow. Minor League Baseball is here, which means if you like prospects, you finally get a chance to see the prospects start playing in all the leagues this year.
Rumor has it San Diego still has a lot of prospects too, including Mackenzie Gore. So I imagine you're really excited to see him.
We are. He starts Friday and probably will get his first home start next Thursday for the home opener for the Chihuahuas. So, yes, a lot of excitement. And his backstop is going to be Luis Castellanos. So, I think Chihuahuas fans are going to be in for a real treat this season, Jeff.
Yeah, absolutely. Should be a lot of fun. And I'm just glad there's minor league ball, too. I mean, and all of our prospect guys, James Anderson's over the moon. He's excited to finally get to see some real minor league games.
We're excited about that. Anything you want to profile on the website for us this week?
Just hit up all of our, if you're in a football league and a dynasty league, a keeper league, hit up all of our draft coverage in baseball. We're helping you every single day. Check it all out. Rotowire.com/free. Get your free 10-day trial.
Terrific stuff. Look forward to having you back next week.
You bet. Thanks, Steve.
You got it.